Well, the word Gaylor has certainly been on a lot of people's lips recently, and I was going to make a retort to a number of creators who have said things that are negative about our community, but instead I would like to focus on the story that nobody is discussing. The fact that I have been a Gaylor or Gaylor adjacent for like a decade now, and I have never seen a time where more people were flooding into the community, and that even, I think, includes the Lover era where she was being rather loud about things. And I think increasingly more and more people are realizing that as much as we've been disparaged, as much as we've been made out to be the problem, the black sheep, the worst part of this fandom, if we are wrong, all we have done is speculate that Taylor Swift, a famous ally, is a member of the LGBTQ community. If we are right and the people against us are wrong, Taylor has been screaming from within the closet for about 20 years now, trying to get as many of her fans as possible to see her authentic self, while meanwhile Taylor has been thwarted by a lot of virulently bigoted people who will not support her if she is not a perfectly straight Pringle. And look, I'll be real, there are some loudly opinionated people in every single subsection of every single fandom who have theories that are incredibly intrusive, especially the fans that are constantly speculating about Taylor's possible pregnancy or Taylor's possible children, or all of these things that Taylor has said that she has a problem with people saying in the past. Whereas disproportionately, the Gaylors are blamed for everything. I constantly hear people, just assuming that satirical posts that are made by Gaylor satire accounts are how we all feel. The only thing that we agree with en masse is the fact that she's a member of the LGBTQ community. We are disproportionately suffering the blame for things. Like, the 1989 prologue is targeted at the media. If it wasn't targeted at the media, it's targeted at all fans who speculate. You can't just pick one line out of it and throw it at Gaylors and ignore the rest the way you read your Bible. I forgot to mention the worst part of this, when Gaylors are disproportionately scapegoated for things that the media does, including by the media. The people that are actually hurting Taylor, i.e. the media, continue to get away with it, whereas the most marginalized group of fans, often who try to take the deepest analysis of Taylor's lyrics, are the ones who disproportionately get blamed for things. Regardless, I don't want to spend any more of my time or my effort discussing the haters because they don't really deserve it. What I do want to discuss is why, especially in this moment, I think so many fans are coming over to the other side. First, I think it's the life of a showgirl. I think a lot of them are realizing, oh, this album is satire, this album is character, this album is making statements about things that people assume about Taylor. Whereas the large majority of non-Gaylors took a long time to get to that conclusion, if they have got there yet. A huge number of fans are still, despite Taylor now saying, the showgirl is a character, there is satire at play here, a lot of people are still taking this 100% at face value, which frankly is the least satisfying way to interpret the album. If you want to sit there and interpret the fate of Ophelia as if it is about Travis coming in and saving Taylor, and you want to interpret Wood as though it is about his Wood, I mean, that's a choice that you can make, but it will make your listening pleasure a lot less than those of us who are taking this album as being layered, as being nuanced, as yes, satire, but there's also some genuine aspects of Taylor's personality, and there's a lot of statements being made about how different people perceive different things, and it is a mirror ball that reflects back a lot of people's deepest, darkest thoughts about Taylor Swift. If you thought in your little noggin, oh, well, like Folklore and Evermore and TTBD, I mean, I guess she wrote decent lyrics there, but like, that's not the norm for her. You might have listened to The Life of a Showgirl and been like, oh, Taylor can't actually write. And I mean, again, that's a choice that you can make, but it means that you're not actually realizing that you can use simple words and still say a wealth of things. And I'm going to do an entire video on that, so I don't want to get too lost in the sauce with Life of a Showgirl. For me, one of the things that makes me believe in Gaylor, that makes me believe in performance Artlor so much, is the way that so many people, completely independent of the rest of the community, right? Because very often, before you're a Gaylor, you think Gaylors are dirty, evil, and bad, so you don't want to think that. So it's very seldom that people are like, oh, a Gaylor made me think this, or I am gay, so I think that this music is all about me. Rather, it is the way so many people have deconstructed both Taylor Swift's persona, and not just deconstructed Taylor, deconstructed their own selves, their own identities, or what they thought their identities were. Like me, I had convinced myself that I was bi for many years, and through a process of looking through Taylor's lyrics and deconstructing Taylor's lyrics and learning more about the things that Taylor, references in her work and things like that, realized, oh, heck, I'm lesbian. And it's not just me, and it's not just people that already thought they were a little bit gay. It is so many people that I have met from really repressive, regressive faith structures, like Baptists and Fundies and Mormons and Catholics, that had never considered the fact that they were queer, and that had deconstructed, like I said, both Taylor and Taylor's work, and also themselves at the same time, and came to very gay conclusions. But even if that's not them, even if that doesn't describe their experience, there is like a trail, a path that so many people follow when it comes to Taylor's work. They realize that Taylor has been saying for years that the thing that she wants people to focus on most is the lyrics. So then they go and they focus on the lyrics, and they want to really look deeply into the lyrics. So they start digging into the songs more. When did she write this? Who did she write this with? What were the circumstances of it writing? And then you start learning these things, and then you're like, wait a minute. That doesn't make sense. The official writing date of All Too Well is 2010, and Liz Rose, the co-writer on it, says that it was a relationship that Taylor had had several years before, that she was finally feeling like she was ready to talk about it. Well, that's weird, because she didn't really start dating Jake until October, and they weren't broken up until 2011, so how did she write a song about him in 2010? Then you sit down and you actually do the math, and you actually think about it, and you realize, wait, she would have written the song before these events happened. If that is the case, she wrote the songs first, and then wrote the events that the songs were about, and then lived out that narrative in front of the media so that the friends would associate that song with that muse. And then you keep digging, and the more you dig into things that we can factually document when they happened, and when was this song written, and who was it written with, and all that jazz, you realize that there's a little bit of a puzzle. People very often say, oh, I miss the days when Taylor used to leave us puzzles in the liner notes of her lyrics with the capital letters. She still leaves us puzzles. You just don't look for them anymore. They have gotten more sophisticated as she has gotten better. So this puzzle exists, and so many people start out with one little puzzle piece, and it seems small and it seems simple, and they're like, okay, I'll put together this puzzle. And they'll sit there and they're like, I have this puzzle, and I think all of the pieces are in the right places. There are things that don't necessarily make sense, even with the puzzle pieces all in the right place. And you'll walk away from the puzzle for a second, and then maybe when you're coming back, you see the puzzle from a different angle, and you realize that it wasn't a flat two-dimensional puzzle. It is actually a multi-layered puzzle that you are just on the first tier of. There is a process via which so many fans have systematically disassembled Taylor's work and identified this puzzle and began following the puzzle clues that is shockingly consistent among many of us. So now you're aware there's a three-dimensional puzzle, and you're like, okay, there's probably a couple of layers. I'm just going to go up to the next layer. The first layer was pretty quick. It was pretty simple. The second layer, not quite so quick, not quite so simple. And you haven't quite solved that second layer yet, but you've noticed a clue to a book that Taylor mentioned once, and you're like, well, let me read this book. Maybe I'll see something in this book that reminds me of Taylor's music, and then it'll give me some extra puzzle pieces, and then I can finish up this layer and move on to the next one. But as you read that book, and as you consume Taylor's music after having read that book, you're like, wait, there are all of these things that this book relates to in Taylor's music. I always give the example of Untamed and the way that 7 is basically the first chapter of Untamed just as a song. But also in the process of consuming that book to understand Taylor's work better, you now understand yourself better. I have said that if you grew up with like the good girl like mentality imbued upon you in your childhood, you need to read Untamed, because that is so much a way of making you a pawn for other people's plans instead of making you like a queen or a king to move on your own board. But now that you have that totally different perspective on Taylor's work, you're like, hey, that just reminds me of a movie I saw once. So you go and you rewatch that movie and you're like, huh, some things feel really familiar about this movie. And then you'll watch the Eras Tour and you'll see that Taylor does gestures and movements that that character did in the movie. And you're like, huh, that's interesting. And then they pay attention to the Fate of Ophelia music video, and they realize that like the men that are on the boat are like attacking Taylor, and the only people that reach out to help her or give her what is it called? To give her a life preserver to save her are the women. And maybe you'll get stuck somewhere on the puzzle, but you know, you've learned a lot of things about yourself, including in my case, I learned that I was a lesbian. So let me go do some lesbian reading. Let me go check out some old lesbian magazines, because I would love to know more about lesbian culture. And then you're like, wow, that is so weird. All of these lesbian periodicals have covers that are so strangely familiar to me. I wonder how that could be. And then you realize you've seen all of those things before in Taylor's work. So you're just sitting there and you're assembling the puzzle, and you're going to see a piece of media, and then you're getting more puzzle pieces, and then you're seeing another piece of media, and then you're assembling more puzzle pieces, and you're like, gosh, I cannot do this on my own. There is too much stuff here. She's been doing this for 20 years and I just started last week. So you start looking for other fans that might have seen things the same way that you did. And maybe you haven't recognized the lesbian angle of things yet. Maybe you're still like, okay, Taylor's still straight. She's just doing things in her lyrics and stuff that I didn't necessarily understand, and that, you know, whatever. We'll worry about that in a second. But as you go to the places where straight people discuss Taylor's music and you try to present them with your theories, your findings, things of that nature, maybe you say something like, I think XYZ song is about Taylor. And in the comments, that song is about Maddie. That song is about Joe. That song's about Travis. Or maybe you're like, I think this song is about her mother. I think this song is about her father. That song is about Travis. That song is about Maddie. That song is about Joe. And you realize that in all of those spaces, no matter how much you try to make Taylor's music about things other than the men she's allegedly dated, there are people in those spaces that are constantly crabs in the barrel, dragging you back down to their boring little one-dimensional level. So then maybe you're Googling, like, who else sees things the way I see them? Who else is willing to accept that Taylor's music might be about Taylor, that Taylor might be her own muse, that there might be so many things that are going on that we haven't recognized before? And you'll find that literally the only group that is analyzing Taylor's work from that perspective, by and large, are Gaylors. And if they're not explicitly Gaylors, they are people that have Gaylor-like mentalities who won't label themselves as Gaylors because of the stigma that they're trying to avoid. And in fact, the deeper you dig into Taylor's work, the less that like mainstream mainline fans, mainline Swifties, are able to see or understand or accept the things that you're seeing. They're just, no, it's about Maddie, it's about Joe, it's about Travis, it's about a Mian. And I will fully admit, even often when you get into the Gaylor space, you will find that a lot of people in the Gaylor space have aligned themselves with 1 to 2 muses that they think the large majority of the songs are about, that they think the large majority of the brouhaha is about, who still don't necessarily want to or try to see where Taylor might be existing throughout this. It's not as common, but it definitely does happen over here, and you finally find what is called performance Artlor. Those of us who have believed for a while now, I believe personally that this goes back to the Reputation era. A lot of people believe that a specific plan or a specific piece of performance art started with Midnight's, but also a lot of us believe that overarchingly she started doing performance art really hardcore with Reputation, but also that many of us are really trying to focus on Taylor's work for Taylor and what Taylor has to say about Taylor and her struggles with the industry and fame and fandom and so many other things. You reach a certain point where you can finally start to see above things and you're like, wait a minute. First off, you're continually realizing that even as smart as you thought Taylor was, even as layered as you thought her work was, maybe you haven't even realized the half of it. You start to really see what she's been doing, how she's been keeping herself safe, how she's been keeping the people she cares about safe, her priorities in the industry. You start to see so many interesting things, and you keep trying to tell other people about them, right? Because very often you're like, the work is so much better this way. There's so many layers, there's so much meaning here, there's so much here to see. You're also learning so much about yourself in the process. And now that you've found those performance Artlor people, you have finally found people that when you're like, hey, I have a theory, they're like, wow, that's a really cool theory. I think I might have a similar theory. Let's discuss how they might intermingle. Or I don't see things that way. I see them from the opposite perspective, but your perspective is cool too. You have finally found people who actually want to take Taylor Swift's work seriously as Taylor Swift's work. and not a product that was generated by a man's influence on her life. That, I think, is what makes me so frustrated about so many fragments of this fandom. The fact that there is so much unwillingness to even consider Taylor's ability. Oh, the songs on this album are so good. She must be getting it good from this man. Oh, the songs on this album are so bad. She must be having a bad time with this man. So little agency, so little thought is given to Taylor, even within the corpus of her own work, even with the analysis of her own work. As you try to tell more and more people, you find out that so many people are so fiercely in defense of this mainstream narrative that they have of what the songs are about and who the songs are about, that even though Taylor has shed a lot of doubt on who and what's everything is about over the years, and a lot of people thought things were about other people, and now they think they're about Maddie ever since TTPD, regardless of the fact that they may have only thought this thing since the most recent album cycle, they are attached to that thing. They are attached to that narrative, to that muse, to that storyline in their heads, because in their mind, it devalues Taylor's work if the songs are not about her real, true life with these men. The number of times I hear Taylor would never lie to us, even though she says, I will show you lies, I will change the details so only the person I'm singing about knows that the song is about them. I will bait and switch you, and not only will I bait and switch you, they will be works of art. Even despite all of that, even despite the fact that basically every album, sometimes with TTPD numerous times throughout the same album, she will give you not even hints, outrightly saying, hey, I'm making this up, I'm lying, bait and switch. People are like, this is the God's honest truth, and if it's not worth anything. Baby girl, if Taylor has been writing the narrative of her life with these men and using that to shield her private life and the people that she loves the most from harm, that makes things better, not worse. The only situation where that makes things worse is if you don't like when music is about women, even the stuff that's written by women. It is so interesting to me, the number of people, and I think this is one of those things that goes on with a lot of those big Swiftie accounts. I think there's two levels, but the first level, I think, is that they don't really like Taylor. They like using Taylor to fantasize about life with these men and what that life would be like. They figure, well, I can't date Travis Kelce, but Taylor Swift is, and I can know what it's like by listening to her music, and I can fantasize about it and project myself into it and all of that jazz. I do think the second angle of it is that a lot of people are really attached to this idea that they know the biblical God's honest truth about what all of these songs are about. They are the expert, they are the ones that know. And if Gaylors are correct and we devalue their work, if we regard their work as not being the actual truth about what the songs are, that devalues themselves because they have made their entire identity over dissecting and understanding Taylor's work, while the entire time they have not actually known what the heck was going on with Taylor's work. And because so many people have gone through this like very specific route of getting to the Gaylor spaces and then ultimately into the Gaylors who believe in performance Artlor, they very much are in need of community and desperate to find other people who want to discuss Taylor at the 3D chess level that they are analyzing Taylor, not at the, this song is about Maddie, this song is about Travis, this song is about Joe. So many fans only dig into the lyrics deep enough to find what they believe are tawdry little secrets about Taylor's torrid love affairs with their muses of choice. But once you finally step back, let go of those muses and just say, I'm not gonna think about the muses, I'm gonna forget they exist. I'm gonna interpret the work from a muse-free perspective and just see what I come up with. And you start realizing just Taylor is very, very smart. There are so many musical references and film references and literary references, and a lot of people are not even realizing that Ophelia, Fate of Ophelia doesn't follow the like Ophelia from Hamlet narrative, or they're saying, well, Taylor's dumb, she doesn't know. Well, is she dumb? Or is she doing something with that narrative that's different than what you thought it was? So very often people would prefer to believe that Taylor Swift is stupid than Taylor Swift is doing interesting things with her work. And in fact, I think one of the most interesting things about this is the way that people who weren't trying to take it from a queer perspective, who didn't believe themselves to be queer in the first place, and who came from very regressive backgrounds where a lot of this stuff would be discouraged, are still finding the course through the puzzle to end up at the same destination that we are. And that is why I think Taylor really tries not to alienate or isolate either side of the fandom. I think she walks a tightrope line because I think she realizes that on one side, yes, there are people that it's not always the bestest to be associated with as liberal as the other people in her fandom can be, and with as liberal as her fandom is thought to be as a whole. But she is one of the rare liberal voices that is in so many women, especially conservative women's minds. So many people on that side of things do not believe in listening to anything that they don't believe is from God or their church or biblically approved, but Taylor Swift is so big and people are so attached to her that churches couldn't tell their parishioners to give up Taylor Swift. And even if they've been listening to her music for years and they haven't ever processed anything on any level other than the fact that it's about a man, that is still planting seeds in their psyches that can be watered and nurtured at a later date, that can help them find their way towards themselves. And I do think in a lot of ways the Life of a Showgirl was designed to put people in a position where, like, you can either start to accept that, like, hey, maybe what the Gaylors have been saying all along is, like, right. I mean, maybe she's not gay, but like maybe the songs aren't about who and what we think it is. Maybe there's secret relationships going on. It puts people in a position where you have to either accept, like, ew, like Taylor is kind of going through like an odious part of her personality development with this album. Like, a lot of the things that she's saying about herself, I don't know if I can necessarily abide. I think in many ways Taylor has made it so the straight narrative of the Life of a Showgirl is not just the most unsatisfying way to angle to see the music by, but also, like, that version of Taylor is not the bestest of people and also has completely regressed by like decades. So many of the viewpoints and beliefs and things of that nature that are shown with the Showgirl character in this album take things back to before Reputation. One of the big things that I've spoken about is religion. Like, a lot of people have discussed how Taylor has gotten a lot more witchy as she has aged. But this album is very much a lean back into Christianity album. I don't believe that her life has legitimately taken that course. I believe that if you are one of those people who, like, wasn't necessarily a Gaylor, but wasn't necessarily attached to most of those muses, if you're somebody who really genuinely likes Taylor and likes her music and likes what she has to say and things like that, when you look at the lyrics, when you read the lyrics from the Life of a Showgirl, it seems like something that she wrote years ago. It feels like a regression. And specifically, it's a regression that I've said a number of times, like, if your real life friends go through similar things, like if your friends spend a decade of their lives learning how to be a self-saving princess and to put yourself first and to realize that the only way that you are going to heal is within. It's not going to come in the hands of a man. So much of her work has been about fairy tales, not reality. And also, fairy tales, they end with the wedding. The real people have to be married to that mediocre manlet for allegedly their lives. Happily ever after in this context where you're just a princess and a damsel in distress and I need a man to save me and I'm waiting for this man to come along, and even though he's lived with another man for years and he's got a lot of like red flag type behaviors and he doesn't really seem that into me, and I don't know, the things he's done with his male roommate are more romantic than the things he's done with you, like, ugh, my battery just died. I don't know where I was, but the last big point that I wanted to make, because I'm almost out of space on my card too, is if you or someone you know is in their mid-30s and their beliefs on relationships and what they want in relationships and what they need in relationships and what they can handle in relationships is founded coming from a place of like making a lot of mistakes and being hurt a lot and learning the hardest possible way what you need and what you can't abide, and then they meet a man or you meet a man and suddenly change tail entirely overnight, do a complete 180 on everything you believe, that is not a healthy relationship. That is either delusion, or it's gaslighting, or it is both. Taylor Swift's whole perspective about if it matters to you, you keep it secret to keep it safe, is a very hard-earned philosophy. And a lot of people want to act like, oh, Joe hid her away from the world and Travis is going on. Nothing is about what Joe wanted or about what Joe said. Taylor has been saying, even predating Joe, that the media especially, and the media speculation, and the media's pressure, and the media twisting things out of context, and the media overly investigating anyone that she's interested in, that has been a huge element of what has destructed a lot of her relationships and caused her a lot of pain. Why in the world, at 35 years of age, would she completely turn tail on that? And if she did, why isn't every interview like, I thought this because of these reasons, but now I've had a couple of additional lessons I've learned. The stakes have not changed. The conditions have not changed. The media is still overly invested in everything, constantly speculating, saying that their speculations are true. Too many media headlines do not disclose the fact that they are just baseless speculation. Too many media headlines are presenting something from Dumois, or whatever the frick it's called, as being some biblical truth that might be coming from Tree. Even if Taylor had been with Travis since July, making it ridiculously public in September is something that completely goes against so many things that she has done and said in interviews, in her song lyrics, in so many different places, in so many different ways. And I think a lot of it comes back to the Tavis narrative is bare minimum. It's not as many red flags as it could be. There are absolutely some red flags with Travis with regards to the fact that he has been alleged of like having like flirtationships with Instagram models while he was in relationships. He also has anger issues, and a lot of people want to be, oh, that's just what football players are passionate. He's just passionate. Football players are not passionate the way he is. Football players do not get up in their coach's face and that is an aggression issue. That is a temper issue. That is not a man that we should want anywhere near Taylor Swift. And the fact that nearly no like mainline Swifties have been like, that man just ain't it. The fact that like they get presented a couple of green flags and they're like, oh, Travis is such a green flag. Very many people do not have high expectations, do not have real standards. The bar is on the floor such that Taylor Swift can get delivered the bare minimum by her man and they will eat it up like it is the most romantic thing they've ever seen. This is not romance. It's not romantic. And again and again and again, there have been a number of things that have been allowed to see the light of day. Like Donna Kelsey and the Kelseys in general, and this whole concept of breeding, and Donna Kelsey accepting a collab request from a comedian that had a bunch of jokes about how she's going to be a breeder with Travis or whatever. Ed Kelsey, who's like, oh, it doesn't need to be that romantic, just get a ring on her finger, who doesn't even know where the proposal happened, who are completely oblivious to the fact that there have been a lot of signs and a number of rumors for a while about Travis not being straight either. And actually everyone that Taylor has dated, at least in the past 12 years or so, has been somebody who before Taylor had some pretty credible gay rumors on their own. A lot of men that live with other men or currently live with other men. I have spoken out about the purpose of the performance art a number of times before, and I think a big element of it is that if people are willing to accept the bare minimum with blaring red flags for Taylor Swift, somebody that they allegedly think very highly of, what are they accepting in their own lives? What are they accepting for their own friends? Like, I do think that one of the reasons that a number of people do come the performance Artlor way is because of the fact that we are actually somewhat realistic about Travis's flaws and don't try to pretend that they don't exist. Now, I do wonder, because Travis is obviously playing playing a character in this whole thing. I do wonder how much he is playing up the red flags to be a part of the story, but who knows? What I do know is that more people than ever are being drawn to the alternate narrative, whether it be that they don't think that Tavis feels very real, something feels off about it, whether it be that the album is completely unsatisfactory if you believe that it's 100% literal, and once you start taking things as satire and characters and things like that, you realize, wait, what else has been satire and characters and stuff? And you realize that, okay, what else has been lies? When you realize that behind her, as I've been discussing ever since the podcast, Pinocchio. Pinocchio has been a huge theme during this whole era, starting from the original episode of the New Heights podcast, where she started giving us more details about this album. There have been a number of disprovable lies. There have been a number of disprovable lies across her interviews. If you watch /read/listen to all of the interviews leading up to this album, there are a lot of inconsistencies. There are a lot of things that don't match with things she said in other albums. The one thing that is other interviews. The one thing that is pretty consistent, though, is just her not really seeming that interested in her proposal. She talks about it in a sense of, oh, I like looking at it like it's TV. Oh, so like it's something that's scripted and not real? And it's funny because a lot of antis think, oh, Gaylors are dead, Gaylors are dead, she's engaged to a man, Gaylors are dead. But honestly, Gaylors have never won harder because so many of the things she's doing we have predicted. So many of the things that are happening are things that we're like, hey, I think that this, that, and the other are going to happen. So much of our interpretation of a lot of things makes Taylor's entire corpus of work into a giant puzzle, whereas so many of the literal Hetler interpretations of the work, it doesn't make a lot of sense. There are so many lines that I constantly see people on Reddit like, what does Taylor mean when she says this? And it's like a very obvious thing that a lot of us have already explained off in performance Artlor. It's like, oh, they really have no idea what these songs are about. And if they don't understand something, they don't really stop to dig. And I do think a lot of this, and I've said for a while now, is about media literacy and teaching media literacy and recognizing that more of our media than ever is like very overproduced and not actually necessarily based in any definition of truthiness. And I have been saying for a while now that I believe a big part of this is making the artifice, the act, the facades more and more evident such that it cannot be denied anymore. And increasingly, this is being proven true. Like so many performance Artlor / Gaylor theories that we have had for years that a lot of us haven't had a ton of proof. It's just like, hey, I just have a vibe that X is about Y. And then Taylor just offhandedly mentions Y one day and we're like, oh. But that's all I have to say for this one. I'm probably going to do another kind of go over on the performance Artlor perspective of Life of a Showgirl, because I think more and more people are becoming more interested in that. But I did want to say something about the amount of negative towards Gaylor content I've seen recently, because it's very funny to me that this is all occurring during a time period when we are getting a huge influx of new people. But regardless, my name is AerinMoriarty. I like discussing Taylor Swift, pop culture, pop media, things that are influencing us from a deeper perspective, because pop music has and always will be a lot deeper than so many people think. It very often is a huge way to affect change, and so very few people realize that, and I think more people need to interpret it. So if that is interesting to you, please be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. I'm still a small channel, so it really helps me out a ton. Bye-bye!